That's really what opened my eyes to my unique context and why, even though the exact same habits were being practiced by my business partner and family and they weren't sick, and you start to believe that the habits aren't involved because other people aren't being hurt by them, then you look at your unique genetics and understand that your biological capacity to deal with those habits is different. That turned into building a functional genomics research company. And so the good news for anyone listening, it's not just about let's stop the pain, it's also let's reverse time. Let's take back what we lost. And that's what happened to me.
Well, I am here today for a very interesting conversation with Kashif Khan. And I met you, I think about how many years ago? Maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And we kept bumping into each other, but we never really had a deep connection. So I'm extremely thankful for your time to come on today. And for every listener here is going to benefit majorly from your intel and your research. And if you could give us a quick view of who you are right now today and how you got here and what happened to make all this a reality.
Yeah, sure. So, my background doesn't come from the industry. And I think a lot of the great functional medicine stories come from somebody who was stuck that couldn't find a solution in allopathic healthcare, had to fix themselves. And then now they want the world to know, like, here's another way, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of what I went through, where I had a whole bunch of issues from autoimmunity to eczema to migraines to gut issues to mood issues like depression. I didn't know what doctors did until I needed one, right? And that was an eye opener for me. Ian, like yourself, I live in Canada. And so we have a healthcare system that's free, but it's really not free. They can't really practice what they potentially would want to. And so when I started to see that I wasn't allowed to ask what caused this, like there's no serendipity of like you're fine for 38 years and all of a sudden you have five chronic conditions. Like what changed? And that was the first time I understood that medicine doesn't even ask that question. The toolkit doesn't include that, right? And so I started investigating myself through, traditional Chinese medicine, naturopathy, homeopathy. I studied genetics, and that's really what opened my eyes to my unique context and why, even though the exact same habits were being practiced by my business partner and family, and they weren't sick, and you start to believe that the habits aren't involved because other people aren't being hurt by them, then you look at your unique genetics and understand that your biological capacity to deal with those habits is different. And so we all have superpowers. We all have kryptonite. And if we don't understand them, then you're kind of shooting in the dark. And that's what I was doing. Healed myself. I'm no longer sick. In fact, healthier than I've ever been. Healed family members. That turned into building a functional genomics research company without even knowing why I was doing it. I was just so enthusiastic about the outcome that we started working with clinics and hospitals and practitioners everywhere, solving complex problems like Lyme disease and stage 4 cancers and Parkinson's. And we started to see that none of this stuff is a switch that gets turned on. It's all caused by environment, nutrition, lifestyle, exposures layered on top of your genetics. Right. And that then turned into me building this business, handing it over to a telemedicine company to bring it to more people, and now just continuing to explore, educate, learn, build new things. And that's what I do is I constantly innovating and trying to find solutions in this sort of functional health world.
Right. And how old are you now, right now?
So now I'm 46, and, when I was 38 and I was sick, my biological age was tested as 43, which is a very easy thing anyone can do now. Go get a true age or cardiovascular elasticity or a glycan test. There's lots of ways to do it, right? So I was 38, my biological age was 43. Now I'm 46 and my biological age is 33. And if
Mhm.
you look at my 38-year-old picture, I literally look older. Like it's not just what happened on the inside, it's also the outside. And so the good news for anyone listening, it's not just about let's stop the pain. It's also let's reverse time. Let's take back what we lost. And that's what happened to me.
For sure. Yeah, and that's a very beautiful thing that you can actually measure because you can't really manage something you're not measuring. And you're able to do a deeper dive, find out what are the root cause problems of the things that were bringing this whatever chronic problem on, which is ridiculous, right? Because we don't know where we're deficient or where we're toxic if we don't measure. So this work. So now you're going deeper into the research. Where do you see you're at, right? Like on a scale, like on a Gantt chart, for example. Where would you be on the chart between 1 and 100 to get to where we're really going to make the needle move completely?
Well, human body, there's no end. It's so infinitely complex. And you just keep diving deeper and you'll find more. Right. And so that's also what makes it so exciting to research because there's so much. But at the same time, that infinite complexity is actually very simple. There's a few key systems that are running all day long and you need them to be maintained and not be insulted by things that weren't supposed to be in your body. Right, and so if you understand your gut, if you understand your hormones, if you understand your toxic burden, if you understand your nervous system and your current state, if you understand your cognition. And there's a few things to know and that are root foundational systems. So shifting from a symptom paradigm of like this disease is called this disease is called this, to more of a system paradigm where it doesn't matter what the disease is called. If your gut microbiome and your nervous system and your toxic burden and all those things were working fine, those aren't possible, right? And they're just all spokes of a central hub of a system failure. And so where I see is the complexity, there'll never be an end to research, but the vast majority of what we need to know and do to be the best version of ourselves, we already know, right? We already have it. And so it's like measure the systems, optimize them, and be that best version of yourself. You don't need to have a chronic disease today.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's a systematic, like you said, it's a systemic overall deal. Like the way I look at it is like a chain with 15 links. You're talking about a hub with spokes is very similar.
Yes.
And each spoke is relying on every other spoke. You can't have any spoke broken or weak.
Yes.
That would be risk of death even. If a chain has a link that breaks, that's definitely physical death. So the ability to measure links and spokes on the hub of their strength, their resilience, the stability of it all is how it's all tied together. So this goes down to root cause, and we all talk about root cause, and we hear people talk about root cause. But what do you think about when people say that? Are they going to the root cause, or are they just still surface level?
So still not. So let me give you an example of actual root cause. So for example, just this morning, there's an executive right here in Toronto that called me, who old friend, right, who spent a lot of money at a clinic called Fountain Life, which I think is run by Tony Robbins, right? And he has a cholesterol issue. He's on a statin. He has a blood pressure issue, hypertension, borderline diabetic. And I told him my approach. He said, "Yeah, but I've already done all that at Fountain Life." I said, "Are you still on drugs?" Yes. Do you understand why you have a chronic disease? No. So did anything change other than you got concierge service and you got faster scans of the same exact information, right? So I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that personalized medicine, concierge medicine is just trying to take the same tools and create access versus finding better tools. So let's now take that issue of cholesterolemia. So there was a tennis player I was working with who, when I say tennis player, like this guy was at Wimbledon. He was at the US Open, like very well-known, famous tennis player. And he, in his prime, developed cholesterolemia, and his doctor said, "You need to get on a statin," just like what this executive called me for today. And he said, "How?" Like, all I do is exercise, eat well, clean. Like, my life does not equal disease. And so he was sent to us saying, "Hey, maybe you have some rare genetic issue. Talk to this genetic research company." This is when I was still in the research phase, a few years ago, right? And so I told him, first off, only 11% of your cholesterol store has anything to do with what you ate. 89% is the inflammation in your body. Cholesterol is the primary anti-inflammatory molecule of the body. It's the most important tool your body uses. So we demonize this highly beneficial tool, and you don't make hormones without it. Your brain doesn't survive without it. Anyone taking a statin starts to have cognition issues, right? So what is going on? Why then is there this negativity? Because when you go disease down, you're looking at the plaque formation as a disease. And of course, you would blame the raw ingredient of cholesterol. But then if you study the biology, cholesterol is a useful tool to fight inflammation. Why did it turn into plaque if your body's supposed to do this? So here's what I told this tennis player. There's a gene pathway called 9p21, which is responsible for essentially the hardware quality of your cardiovascular system. So if I have your DNA, I can tell you, if I take your arteries, most cardiovascular disease doesn't start in the heart. It starts in the arteries. They get inflamed, calcified, plaque, all sorts of stuff goes on. So I can actually take your artery and tell you, is the material 10 out of 10 titanium, or is it 2 out of 10 paper? What quality of tissue did you get in your birth? Like, literally, this
Mhm.
gene determines that. And he had the worst potential quality of this endothelial tissue. The inner lining of the blood vessel is the endothelium. His was paper thin, highly prone to inflammation. So the step one, let's park that. He had bad hardware, right? What did he do for a living? He played tennis, which meant he exercised all day long. So that drives us towards his ability to deal with that habit, right? What are his habits on top of his DNA? There's a gene pathway called SOD2, which drives what we call superoxide dismutase, which means your mitochondria, every cell in your body, there's 50 trillion cells making up this body, all have mitochondria in them. Mitochondria is doing a whole bunch of things, but what it's most commonly known for is energy production. Let's take nutrition, nitric oxide, oxygen, and turn those into energy. And that energy for cognition, for metabolism, for hormones, the energy that you feel, all of it, right? So, in the process of using oxygen as a fuel source, you make a byproduct called an oxidant. You burn any fuel, you're going to get smoke. And the smoke from breathing and pushing your body into heavy cardiovascular activity is called oxidants, which leads to oxidative stress. He had the worst version of this SOD2 gene, which meant his ability to deal with all that oxidation was suboptimal, minus 70% in his case. What
Mhm.
did he do for a living? Live in oxidative stress, excess oxygen. So essentially, it's like if your cell was a fireplace, he didn't have a chimney. the genetic process of the chimney to remove the oxidation that was the outcome of the oxygen fuel, he didn't do that job. So his cells were choking in soot, in
Mm,
smoke
right.
that wasn't being removed. Now there's a secondary gene called GSTT1, which is a glutathione gene, which now any of the soot that does get removed from the cell is supposed to collect and remove that. He's missing that gene. It's not even about what version or what variant. Literally, there's something called a copy number variation, which means did mom and dad even give you the gene? You're potentially missing it. So now he has this worse quality endothelial tissue, horrible ability to deal with oxidative stress and recovery from that, no ability to clear the oxidants, the gene's literally missing. And as a daily activity, he went into oxidation. So what ends up happening, those oxidants are now in the bloodstream and they start to cause inflammation. And if I look at his genetics, the inflammation will happen here first because this is where he's not built properly. And what happens when the endothelial tissue gets inflamed? The body deploys cholesterol. Let's use cholesterol to start fixing this problem. But cholesterol was never meant to be a tool in response to a toxic burden. It was meant to be for injury, acute problems. You go into battle, you drop a farming agricultural tool on yourself. Fix something, not deal with a constant chronic toxic burden. So the cholesterol molecule was not designed to come into contact with oxidants and toxins. So the cholesterol molecule now gets damaged itself, right? All that oxidation that's causing it, it also damages the cholesterol molecule. So now it starts to form a plaque because the cholesterol transport system, the ApoE gene doesn't recognize it anymore, doesn't look like cholesterol, just leaves it there, it's oxidized. And now the oxidized plaque starts to form. But that's the thing that the doctors measure is the disease-centric metric, which is now that you have plaque, we're going to diagnose this as cardiovascular disease and here's a pill you take. Versus where did this start? This started with bad tissue, bad oxidation, bad glutathione activity, and the wrong habits. So of course, he's a star tennis player. I can't tell him you're not going to exercise anymore because the genetic answer would have been focus on weight training. Don't do cardiovascular training, right? But he couldn't do that. It's his career, his peak career. So instead, what do we do? Give him nutrients to support his endothelial tissue. Give him nutrients to support his mitochondria and antioxidative activity. Get him precursors to glutathione that don't need genetic instruction that can help clean him up. And all of a sudden, voila, his doctor says, I don't know what miracle you perform, but you don't need cholesterol pills anymore. Right. So that's root cause medicine, which is not the symptom or the disease. We shouldn't ever name a disease. We should just ask which systems are broken, the hubs, like you said, the chains, like you said, and support them, both the hardware and the software, the jobs that are happening in the body. And all we need to know is which jobs aren't happening properly. And that tells us what you're good at and what you need to avoid.
Right.
Right.
So, and everybody's super uniquely different, just like our everybody has a unique face, a unique fingerprint, they have a unique DNA, and one size does not fit all. And this whole in the individual, the tennis player was not deficient in statins.
No.
And statins are the absolute worst thing you could possibly take. You couldn't give him something worse. I mean, you probably could, but that's really bad, as you know. Like, if could you like give us a little education on how that actually horrible statins are for the body? Like, what are the side effects you've learned about statins alone? Because I think people
Look,
don't
if
know.
you look at the data and put two charts together, which is the use of statins and the rise in Alzheimer's, the line goes like this, hand in hand, right? Now, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but it's a major. If you take something that suppresses the main raw material for the health of your cognition, your brain, what are you doing? You're depleting your brain's what potential longevity and health span, right? So you can't meet anybody that has experienced longevity that has low cholesterol. If you see a 95-year-old that is thriving riding their bicycle, their cholesterol is high, right? What they don't have is plaque and oxidative cholesterol. They don't have, their calcium score looks good in their blood work.
Mhm.
And what doctors don't do is, oh, you have high cholesterol, let me check your calcium score. Because maybe, for example, if you come from an ancestry of warriors that were in battle regularly, you might actually have a genetic gift of actually being able to maintain a higher cholesterol level to be able to respond to injury faster. And today that's demonized. That's like your cholesterol is high. But if you understand that genetically it has nothing to do with you might know, and normally I won't drop names, but this was already discussed on his podcast. So do you know Ben Greenfield?
I know Ben very
Yeah,
well.
you know him very well. I figured you know him well, right? So there was a time where I used to like manage the health of him and his kids and his father before his father passed away, right? And his father was really into the work we were doing. And so he called me one day saying, I don't get it. I do everything right. And I was just told my cholesterol is bad and like I need to take pills. He said, I don't want to take pills. And when you look at Ben, he looks like he's carved out of marble, right? This is not a guy that you would ever think needs a pill for anything.
Mhm.
So when I looked at his genetics, I said, maybe it's not a bad thing. Is your calcium score bad? No. Do you have plaque? No. So what's the problem? He said, well, my doctor's saying I need to do something about it. Okay. Let's figure out what's going on here. What got you there? Let's look at the biology. So if you think about cholesterol, again, molecules sent to the site of inflammation to fix it. Now there's various steps in that. One of the steps is there's receptors in the tissue that have to grab the cholesterol molecule and bring it down into the tissue where it's needed. And that's how your body regulates where the cholesterol is going. It drives this creation of receptors. But once the receptors are done their job and you have enough cholesterol in that location, there's proteins that break them down. So you stop doing that. So you don't accumulate too much and create the plaques. Your body knows how to manage this cholesterol versus plaque problem. There's a gene called PCSK9 that drives the efficiency by which you break down the receptor. If you have a really good PCSK9 gene, sometimes good isn't good. So he happened to have the best version of the PCSK9 gene. So he broke the receptors down very quickly, almost a little too quick. So now he's also a guy that trains a lot, exercises a lot, stretches his body. So yes, his body's always in repair mode, which means cholesterol is being used. But because he didn't break the receptors, or because he did break the receptors down too fast, it was underutilized. So inflammation wasn't dealt with properly, and cholesterol was in the bloodstream as opposed to in the tissue where it was meant to be, simply because of a single gene pathway. So was this cholesterol high according to medical sort of data and disease-centric thinking? Maybe. Was it high according to longevity and seeking health span and lifespan? No, it was actually ideal. Did he have any plaque? No. So I told him, if things ever get out of hand, suppose you do start developing a plaque, right? Who knows, right? Even then, do you need a statin? No, we already know the root cause. The receptor gets broken down too fast. What you need is something called a PCSK9 inhibitor, which is doctors have access to. They just don't know who to give it to.
Mhm.
And what that does is it slows the PCSK9 gene down so you stop breaking the receptors. And now once again, you dealt with the root cause double fold. You stop creating that excess cholesterol because you use it, and you also fight the inflammation better because it's getting to the tissue instead of staying in the bloodstream. So you can ask any question about any chronic issue from autism to fibromyalgia to migraines. It doesn't matter. It has to be caused. You weren't born with fibromyalgia, right? So what changed? Your environment, your nutrition, and your lifestyle on your unique genetics. And we need to understand both sides. Who are you and what are you doing with that? Both matter.
Mhm. Yeah, we need 3 things. We need water, air, and glyconutrition. Gotta have it, and the whole world is filled with incorrect glyconutrition. Where have you tied your research into that?
So we're actually looking at that right now. So this is what I'm saying, that the human genome is, there's 22,000 genes, and no single gene does one job. We think this is the gene for that. This is the gene. Then you start to dig. It's also doing that. Oh, it's also talking to this other gene, right? We're now literally digging into that now, because I liked the sort of glycan tests that are there. I think it's a good way to understand how old you are, right? And so we're literally looking at that. So if you talk to me in about a month, I'll actually be able to give you the outcome of what we were studying today.
Right. Yeah, because reversing the cross-linking is something the medical world says you cannot do. There are definite measurements you can tell how cross-linked you are, because if you've had the wrong glucose, the wrong not glucose, but the wrong sugars, let's call them that, in your bloodstream with insulin, free insulin, and all that stuff, and then it's cross-linking with the proteins and the fats and turning our bodies basically into a hardened plastic
Mm,
piece of crap, right? Until you're dead. Reversing that is a thing. And I've been looking at that. I found out mechanical ways of reversing it and then dynamical ways. So
mm,
I'm very interested in what your research is going to show, because this is one of the biggest elephants in the room that is invisible. It's the advanced glycation end products. So I measured my body with the typical, like the one that goes in your skin, right? It doesn't have any gel or anything. And this is what woke me up. I was like, I'd heard of advanced glycation end products, didn't really know,
mm,
thought I knew, right? And so
yeah,
now I get measured and I'm 68. I turned 68 on Sunday. So I'm in my 68th year. I get measured and I'm coming in at 64 years old.
mm,
Well, that's not impressive. I'm this health guy. What's
yeah,
up?
yeah.
Okay. Because I'm measuring very low age on other biomarkers and other feedback devices. And I always wondered, like, I'm not sure if that's really the whole picture. So I find out, oh no, it's not the whole picture. So I'm cross linked. So I do a treatment on that exact part of my body that I know how to do. It's a special thing. And I waited 2 days after the treatment and I reversed my age 14 years
Wow.
with the same device. Okay. But I knew that there was something to that because I supported my body to heal all my joints. So at 60 years old, I was a very broken old man mechanically,
Mhm.
right? With all my biomechanics. So, and all my joints are now fully repaired. And you've probably seen my videos with the little slapper thing. And it's, okay, that actually works. Okay. Optically, it's like, are you freaking crazy or something? But it actually works at a high level. So that's the mechanical side. So what you're into is this dynamic, although your research could measure this mechanical thing and prove it. Everything is all about validation and proof, because you've seen it in your life. We're socially conditioned to believe certain things and then accept certain things. That's why how many people do you think are on statins right now?
It's the number 1 prescribed medication,
Oh,
right?
right. And then
Yeah.
how about Ozempic?
It's
What
what
the
it would be, I mean,
hell?
Sure, it's the number one soon, right?
Right. Like, are you kidding? That is so devastating. Both of those things are complete killers. And so what I see, and this is where I want to get your feedback, because I know you know this already, because I'm preaching to the choir. But information is weaponized against us all the time. And these numbers like PSA or cholesterol or whatever, if you could give your intel, because you're the one deep into this, what are the things that are weaponized most against us that you've seen that people need to become aware of? So when they go to the doctor or they go to the dentist or they go to whoever, that they're going in with wisdom to be able to discern what's going on.
What the context itself, like, the doctors, what are the 2 key ingredients? Ego and insecurity, right? Feed this person with ego so that they become the sole conduit to the truth they would never be willing to hear, and also fill them with insecurity so they'll never reach beyond their toolkit. And that context itself is the moat that protects the industry, right? So you can't access healthcare without talking to someone who's wired that way.
Mm,
And you do see a bit of a shift now because there's a lot of clinicians are sick of their work. They see what they're doing, and post-COVID, there's a bit of fatigue from all that. And so there's a shift, but then they try and shift and they're not allowed to do their job anymore. And so they move into functional medicine, into private practice. And, so that's a big one. It's like just the mindset of who you're talking to, who truly believes that you're not allowed to know, right? It's against the rules. And that mindset comes from the evidence-based research model, which actually came out of Canada. It's right in between where you and me live at McMaster University, right
yeah.
kind of middle, right? And so they created it, but the intention was like safety, right? What that got turned into is once again a moat of protection where unless you're willing to find the average amongst tens of thousands of people and spend tens of millions of dollars, you haven't proven anything, which is not true.
Mhm.
Look
That's right.
look at me. I'm not sick.
Mhm.
How is that not proof? And so I went to the FDA many times and spoke to them about anecdotal evidence. I said, "Why can't you accept it's true. It happened, right? And what if I can prove that anecdote over and over and over again? Is it not true? Isn't there a pattern?" So they said, "Yeah, well, look at that if you get 47,000 people on a condition." Right? So they expanded what they thought was the number of people. So just know that the context is already the first problem before you even get into the discussion what you're being offered, right? And it's like, the fear mongering is real. Whatever you buy whether it's food, personal care products, clothing is designed to hurt you, right? The clothing is full of frequency that is off for your body. It's full of plastics that will hurt your body. Your frying pan is going to make you sick. Your toilet paper is going to make you sick. It's true. And it sounds overwhelming, but the simplicity of not being overwhelmed is just trading back, give the convenience back. That's what you're gaining, right? I am living this life of convenience, where I've been entitled to believe that that's my right, that I should have access to all this stuff, but it's all hurting you. So go back to simplicity where you spend more time doing less things, right? And go back to what we used to do. So there's more time spent on cooking the food, preparing the food. There's more time spent on what is the quality of your water. There's more time spending on it's not the most convenient, shampoo bottle that is full of chemicals, that it's maybe 2 or 3 things, so go back and remove all the conveniences because everything that it takes to make them convenient hurts you.
Right. Yep. The convenient fatal conveniences. My friend Darren Oldine wrote a book called Fatal Conveniences.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. You gotta check him out. He's got
Yep.
a podcast as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Darren Oldine, Olien or OL,
Yeah, 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 for sure.
right? He was
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that Mother Earth kinda thing with Zac Efron
Yes, yeah,
back
yeah,
in
yeah.
the day. Yeah,
Yeah.
they toured all over the world. He's a good friend, and he's a great guy too. He's
Yeah,
just
he's
down to
awesome.
earth, heart-centered, cool dude. Now, you hit a nerve with me. So, I was born in 1958 in Hamilton, Ontario, the youngest of 5 children. I had 2 older brothers, 2 older sisters, and they all were all very allopathic. My oldest brother went to McMaster University and got his medical degree. You can look him up, Dr. Doug Clark
Okay.
McMaster of all places, okay? So, he brought all the new information to our family in 1972 to 1974 because he was going through his whole internship, and he was actually it was 1974 where he was done his residency, and he was officially now in practice. And he told my mom and dad that they had to stop all animal fat. They had to go to margarine, that was the big one, and no eggs, none of that stuff. Between 1974 and 1984, my dad got angina, had
Mm.
open heart surgery, struggled for the rest of his life, died at 76 years old in 1996 after 2 open heart surgeries, all kinds of I mean, just suffered like mad until he was dead. And I reflected back on that. And then when I got sick at 46 at your age, I hit the wall at 300 miles an hour, tumor, heart disease, liver problems, total disaster, and didn't know what to do. Doctors in Toronto where I was living, all the specialists are telling me, da, 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 all the same stuff they are from my uncles in 1978, all the surgeries and the chemicals and the whatever. I was like, "Are you kidding? You're giving me the same thing my uncles had 26 years ago?" I don't think so. So I called my brother and he says, Well, it's all genetic predisposition. There's nothing you're gonna be able to do about it. It's the cards you were dealt. You look like Uncle Don, he died at 51, you're 46, you got the same symptoms,
Mhm.
duh, right? There's nothing you're gonna be able to do, and I said, "Well, that doesn't help me," and so then I got away from that whole thing. I didn't know what to do, and I ended up learning that there are people on the earth like you who have the highest level information, and I know that I would never have found you in a million years, but I asked to be led
Mhm.
because you can't find. How would I find?
Mhm.
You had a 36-month window to live. I needed to get that 36 months turned into 60 months, right? You can't play around. You got to get the right information soon enough to survive. And so I just asked to be led, and I was just slowly led. Anyway, long story short, between 2004, when I found out how ill I was, to 2009 or so, I still had the tumor, but it was dormant.
Mhm.
I looked a million times better. I had dumped 90 pounds off my frame, and I met my brother in Toronto. He came in, and he's like, he would never receive anything I told him. He was always like, "Where's the double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized studies?" I said, "Doug, if I would have waited for that, I'd be already dead a long time ago." Like you said, if you have numbers, you don't have to have all that. Get
Yeah.
serious, guys. Come on. If we
Yeah.
see something that's working anecdotally enough, and there's enough people validating that, okay, let's try that. So long as it doesn't hurt you, right, and just do no harm. And so then that fast forwarded to me bringing everything to him for free, with what I learned. He was going to sail around the world starting in 2010. He had built a sailboat for 5 years, was ready now to go. The day that he was starting his journey at the bottom of Panama, having just gone through the canal, going to Tahiti or to Fiji, right? That was his first stop. He couldn't understand a word he was hearing and he couldn't speak. Turns out, fast forward, that was on November the 4th, 2010. By December the 1st or right in there, he was brought back to Canada because he had been in intensive care for 3 weeks. He survived, got a glioblastoma multiform level 4 tumor diagnosed in January, was dead in March of 2011. And when I went to him with the stuff that's certified to help him with what his problem was, he just kept saying, where's the double blind placebo controlled randomized study? Where's the double blind? He said the same thing.
Yeah.
Doug, it's on the thing. I drank ounces of the stuff
Yeah.
and it got all this crap out of my system. And that was actually the thing that took a full year later because I've been taking it and it totally dissolved the tumor out of my body. So by spring of 2011, which was a month after he died in March of 2011, that had completely dissolved it. And I saw it working. He wouldn't take it. So I told my sister who was taking care of him because he couldn't go back in a sailboat, right? Because he was still having these seizures 2 or 3 times a day. And so I said, "Just put it in his drink." "No, I can't do that." I go, "Why not?" Right? But yeah, but it turns out you had to spray it right in your mouth. But the point is, I think the whole deal is, come on, guys, let's get real. Like you're absolutely real. You're on the ground. And the thing I love about your work is that you don't have anywhere to hide.
Yeah.
You do stuff that either works or doesn't work, and it works at different levels, good, great, great, or greatest. And your research is taking us up to the highest levels because you're willing, like you said, you're not ego driven, you're not insecure,
Mm.
right? Like me, same thing. I just got my ego shattered when I realized I knew nothing and everything I knew was killing me. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, wake up, Ian. Good job, And so now this is the essence of what I want the listener to get today is people like yourself, you're divinely placed on the earth for a purpose and a reason. You're not another guy spewing a bunch of stuff to try to convince somebody of something. You're actually measuring. And I haven't met really anyone at the levels of measurement that you have gone into because it's just your passion, it's your gift, you're driven. And so could you tell us a little bit about the passion side, the empathy, the purpose, like what really drives you? And the fact that you've got your health back, which is awesome, you're going to get healthier into the future. And together we're going to share stuff. So what drives you?
So, it's funny because I have a community call I do twice a week. Like a whole bunch of our clients show up, and it's like a live Q&A, right? I'm just there to support and ask questions. We have a couple doctors that show up to those calls too to support. And somebody said, "What's the number one thing you did out of all the stuff that you would say is the greatest longevity tool?" So I paused. I was like, "Wow, that's a great question." And I realized it's nervous system. I saw it was sense of purpose
Mhm.
and the people around you, right? So that sense of purpose was when you stop working for profit, you start working for purpose. The profit's coming anyway, it's a byproduct, right? But when you're working on a mission, it's no longer work. And what that does for your nervous system, right? So that became it's always been like a number one thing. It doesn't matter if I'm like I work with NHL players, NBA players, I work with Hollywood celebrities, but I also work with like stay-at-home mom and dad. I work with everybody, right? So why do I say that? Because it doesn't matter if I'm working on some Hollywood set in LA or I'm working with some mom in Ohio. We always start with the nervous system. Always, always, right? And most people don't realize how overwhelmed they are in terms of the mechanics, if we go back to mechanics, of how your body is meant to deal with input and stimulus versus the input and stimulus you actually experience day to day. The loss of control, the chronic stress and anxiety, the confusion, on top of then the mold that is influencing your nervous system, on top of the EMF that is influencing your nervous system, on top of the broken gut that's influencing your nervous system. But most of us, when we go take the supplements and do the foods and say, well, this didn't work. Like, for example, Ian, you have some incredible formulas that we use, right? And so for someone to say, well, Ian's stuff didn't work, you might hear that. It's not true. It works. It's formula. Is your nervous system even in a rest and recovery state right now where your body even wants to repair anything? Are you only going to get 20% ROI because you're stuck in fight or flight and your body doesn't care about that priority right now? It's trying to focus on not dying
Right.
because that's what it thinks is happening.
Mhm.
So, yeah, for me, that would be a big one, is this regulating the nerves, and then that sense of purpose gives me, I guess, everything you're hearing.
Right. So you yourself, no, so your autonomic nervous system personally is in good condition. Is for measuring with HRV, what is your most accurate means of really telling where you are at personally? And then for us to learn like, how do we know that our autonomic nervous system is mostly in restoration mode and not stuck in sympathetic?
So, the typical biohacker would give you metrics like HRV and things like that, right? Which, yes, you can measure, and it's straight data. What I look at is, again, anecdotally and practical reality is like, what was the quality of my sleep, right? If I'm not sleeping, I'm in fight or flight. I know it, right? And I know that I push too hard, I gotta slow down, right? So that's a big one for me. What is the state of my metabolic health? Like, I can feel it. Am I plowing through food quickly and feeling nourished and not bloated, and or does it feel rough today and my appetite is off, or the nervous system will shut your gut off, right? How is my immunity? Well, how do I feel around my resilience and immune system? Am I noticing lymph swelling, and oh, once again I'm suppressing my immune system because I'm working too hard and getting into fight or flight, right? And the big one is just the triggers. Like, who's gonna, like, the biggest toxin you could have is a toxic person, right? It's like the easiest way to break your nervous system is with a person, and it's also the easiest way to fix it is the right people, right? That's who will heal you too. So, what state are you at? Are you triggered? Right? So, monitoring, and I do this a lot, by the way, which is I know who the trigger people are, and I know how I've behaved with them in the past, and I know how I behave with them now, and I can see when it's getting to that point of the way I'm behaving with them, which looks like the past. And once again, nervous system is overwhelmed. So there's just being practical. Right, you can measure HRV is probably the easiest way, like you said, right? It definitely is the easiest straight out metric, but applying it practically allows you to live and breathe it, not just do it as a job that you parked and then
Mhm.
measure it once in a while, right? Like, live and breathe it, and everything you do, you should see it, right? And that's to me good measurement.
Right. And if the body is deficient or not fueled properly with the elemental things and the nutrition is going to stay in flight or fight because then it's survival, like you said. And that's to me, it's like revving an engine up to the red line and holding it there. It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not a good idea because then if another stressor comes on, it's going to blow up. And I have seen a phenomenon the last few years, especially like since COVID, where people who would normally have acted okay are if you get it, they get into stress, they blow up,
Mhm.
which is, I think, the strongest indication that they're way too long in flight or fight. They're not having the brain here, not just the heart and the gut, but this brain fueled. And if you don't have this fueled, this runs the whole show. What would, in your estimation, what's the ratio that this brain up here is running, like from 1 to 100%?
So that also depends on your state, right? So, when you're calm and when you're working with a sense of purpose and you're leading with your heart, it's very different than when you're engaged in fight or flight and everything is an emergency and you're only using thought and responsiveness versus wisdom and emotion. That it's a very different way to think. So here's an interesting anecdote. There's a gene pathway called 5-HTTLPR, right? And it makes your serotonin receptors. Then there's another gene pathway called TPH2 that drives tryptophan production, which is the sort of precursor to serotonin. And these gene pathways, so when your serotonin dysregulated, when these genes aren't working, what is serotonin? We know it as like a mood regulator, right? But the actual mechanism, if we want to get to mechanics again, is serotonin allows your brain to prioritize stimulus. So whatever's going on, what percentage of information do you give attention to? The right amount, or are you seeing the world at somewhat of a greater level of detail and you believe that that's actually what's valued and important, which is the way some people see the world, right? Now, if you are serotonin dysregulated and you can't prioritize stimulus, then you are seeing, hearing, and understanding more than potentially the people around you, right? Which means it's so much easier to get irritated. It's so much easier to be disappointed. It's so much easier to be overwhelming to the people around you. Picture the helicopter mom. That's what it looks like. right? Now, this trait of 5-HTTL-LPR dysregulation and TPH dysregulation is meant to be approximately 5% of the population. So it's meant to be an unusual trait. It's meant to be actually a leadership trait. You see more, you're always trying to protect the people, you always see problems, you're always trying to prevent calamities. So it's a leadership. You pull people forward because you notice things first. Now, when I do a group session with, say, 100 people that have all signed up for like some genetic program that might go over some weeks or some number of months, and they're all there because they're stuck and they can't figure out why the things they're doing aren't working, and they did all the stuff and they don't feel good, and now they lean on their genetics. In that context, consistently over and over and over and over again, when I survey the room, 60 to 70% of the people are serotonin dysregulated. You go from the general population of 5% of people are wired for anxiety, or what we would call a high functioning anxiety, which is not the anxiety of like, I can't get out of bed, leave me alone, but more the anxiety of like, can't stop doing, can't stop thinking, can't stop trying, can't stop being irritated and disappointed. That is a major drive on your nervous system. And when I have, again, a room full of people that are stuck in their health, 60 to 70% of people have this genetic path with which should have been 5%, which shows you how directly tied it is. Now, what this leads to, the thing you were describing earlier, is cortisol addiction. People get used to that and they feel a sense of guilt when they're not in high functioning anxiety. It's like, sit down, what's next, right? They can't sit down. They can't stop because they're addicted to cortisol. And they actually, it's also a cultural phenomenon where we're taught to believe that you're losing and you're failing if you don't move at that pace. So it's a flywheel where the more you do it, the more you get stuck on it, the more your body anticipates that this is where you're supposed to be. And you literally develop this addiction and you live there, and then fight or flight is your norm, and it feels unusual or literally makes you feel guilty to not be in fight or flight.
Yeah, that's a major trap. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great, really great look at things as far as a realistic look, because that is a true measurement. And I mean, today we're pulled every direction from every imaginable platform. How many communications do we have from Telegram to WhatsApp to iMessage to blah blah blah? It never ends. And so we are pulled on, and the more that we are in crisis, in reality, the more calm we should become, because then you can deal with it. But the more we're in crisis, the more agitated, the more fearful, the more upset, right? The more anxious, the more flight or fight. So there's a master key that guarantees a human being to be able to drop back into parasympathetic. I like the example of a five-star general, where if a five-star general at any time loses their cool or has any kind of response that is not extremely grounded, they're demoted immediately. And, you know, the lieutenant levels and the sergeants, and they're freaking out and swearing at everybody and having a fit. Well, that they're not going to go above that.
Yeah.
But and they're put in that place because that's the type of personality they have, because they think that's what's needed in boot camp.
Mhm.
But we're talking about being a five-star general in your life, for
Mm.
your body, for your health, and being in that chill thing, so that more intent. And look at the society right now. They create all these wars. They do all this stuff. They're hitting us from every angle from news media, which I don't pay attention to, but I'm aware of. And it's like, so what you're really hitting in on is the ability for you to learn how to self-regulate,
Mm.
and what's required there. And because everybody's different, we have to know individually. So how would a person access you and your information, for example, right now, to say, hey, I got to get hold of Kashif and find out what's up here, because sounds like a major master key. Where's the best access point?
I mean, if you just wanna learn, I would say Instagram is the best place. I post something daily that's informative, so if you wanna go there, if you want help, like, there's me, but we have a whole team, I would say maybe I can share a link with you to, like, one of our intake coaches that can understand what someone actually needs. Remember, what I do is everything is custom,
Hmm.
because if your body is custom, how can I put you through a standard process? I tend to understand who you are, what the problem is, or what the goal is, where do you live, what do you eat, all like everything, right? And then the work is custom. So we have guys who are really good at designing programs for people. So yeah, so Instagram, easy. You'll learn every day. And maybe, I'll share a link with you for how people can, get work done if they need it.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I put all these links in the show notes so people get access. So yeah, the thing that's really cool about what you're talking about, and very few people want to talk about this because they can't deal with it, is that each person, as not only do they have unique DNA, but they have a unique history. They have a unique family. They have a unique location where they were dropped into this world. They're at a unique stage of their life.
Hmm.
They could be young to old. It doesn't matter. You're able to create an assessment around where they are. Let's catch them where they are. Let's not assume that there's one size fits all, and people need to be dealt with as that unique individual. And they're extremely important. I think people's self-esteem are being pushed down where they feel like they're this little tiny speck of dust in this massive universe, and they're insignificant. No, you are the most significant thing in your universe by far. because you're in your universe, I'm in mine.
Yeah.
You are the most significant thing, right? And so everybody who plays a bit part in your life, and then people who play the major part, your spouse or your mate or your children, or they play major roles. But like with me, I play a bit part in your life. I get to see you once in a while. We interface and say, hey, how's it going? And all these bit part pieces are really important to make sure that they're beneficial. So you're giving people customized support, caring about them at that level.
Mm.
To me, that's what's driving you
Yeah.
and very unique, and you can talk to it. Whereas other people are like, dude, I can't do that. I'm just going to give you the general whatever I think is going to help kind of everybody. And it doesn't, and they can't even assimilate it. And so deficiencies. So are you able to measure things that are deficient and that need to be supported from an elemental standpoint?
So the primary tool I use is genetics because I already understand your biology. It's kind of like, what's sitting in front of me? Is it a Ferrari or is it a tank or an SUV? Right. Now I know what job it's supposed to do. And I know what job it can't do. So if I understand the foundational biology, I already know nutrition, fitness, like what is this thing designed for? This machine that's called the human body in front of me. Now that being said, if someone's truly stuck, there's DNA is who are you? Then there's other tests, which is where are you at now, which is your gut, your hormones, your toxic burden, your immune system. So those would be the primary tools, and I'd say if I had all of that, I could create somebody a personalized playbook to live to their full potential, which I think is around 120,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And
with
when
a
I
good
say live,
quality
it's
life.
not just about the number of years, it's about the quality of those years,
Yep.
right?
It's
Everybody should die of, like, being on vacation and a coconut falls on your head when you're 121.
yeah,
That should be it. There should be no disease or illness or pain. It should be, you're meant to live with good health.
right. That's true. And I think that's what's really coming online. It's a tiny percentage of the population who currently know that that's a possibility. In our world, it's a very huge percentage because we're around people who know this on a large scale, but it's on a very tiny scale compared to the population of the world. So getting this information out, catching people where they're at, lifting them up, rising tide floats all boats. And the work I think is very important to collaborate because you're at a central point where we can all come to you and say, okay, Cash, I need to get a measurement. These people, like, let's not play around anymore. Like, people don't have the time, the energy, the effort, and even the money. They could be a trillionaire. They still don't have enough money to spend on the wrong thing
Mhm,
because it's not going to get them where they got to go. I think there's massive distraction in this so-called natural healing world.
mhm,
There's overwhelm, massive overwhelm. And it's getting to the definitive, simplest, like you said right out of the gate, simplify. We are ultra complex, but at the same time, this is simple in reality. And so what you're doing is greatness is taking something very complex and giving us one button here, one button there, push those buttons, and then watch what happens automatically within our sophisticated system.
mhm.
If we're simply supporting it from a foundational level all the way through to the whole being. So one last thing. What have you noticed with people's personal relationships when they get their body back online properly and you've dealt with these pathways, these genetic differences, these deficiencies? What have you seen improve in that area?
Yeah, so, it's not just relationships, also finances and everything gets better. There's 2 things. There's the practical reality and there's a bit of a metaphysical thing too, right? So the practical reality is when your nerves are working, when your gut is working, when your heart is working, when your mind is working, you're working, right? And so relationships get better. Your ability to tolerate, be empathetic, your ability to hear and see and not have a tunnel vision, right? Which is what happens when your nervous system is broken, changes relationships entirely. But it also helps you determine which relationships are useful and which ones to let go, right? So that's one. Then there's the metaphysical side, which is the way your body communicates with your universe, the way you described it, right? Like every decision you make changes your trajectory. So every decision you make is a choice towards this health we're talking about or a choice away from it every single time.
Mhm.
Now, how you communicate through the universe, which is another aspect of DNA that doesn't get spoken of that often. DNA is the actual, let's say, antenna that sends the signals out. So your mitochondria is a receiver that's surveying the environment, trying to understand what's happening to tell your body and cells what exactly they need to be focused on, right? You can kind of sense somebody walking up behind you. How do you have that sense? Your mitochondria in your magnetic field is telling your body this is happening. Make an adjustment, right? So that you're staying ahead of any calamity. The same way your DNA is sending signals out, right? So your DNA is the source of communication with your magnetic field to send signals out to draw towards you what you want. Now, your DNA, what is aging? Literally, aging is DNA oxidation. Whatever your body experiences as an inflammatory threat, eventually the cell membranes wear down, they become permeable, the DNA becomes oxidized and damaged, and the jobs aren't happening well anymore because the instruction isn't legible because it's broken. It's like a book that got dipped in water that doesn't can't read it so well. But the function isn't there. The organs don't function as well. The skin, the hair starts looking different. DNA damage. There's a such thing as DNA repair. right? And when you start to get healthy, your body does have certain enzymatic activity that will actually help you repair. If you stop causing the problem, your body will start to fix what problem was caused. If your DNA is the communication tool that you have with your magnetic field in the universe to get what you want and to sort of, in a nutshell, manifest, if you want to use that word, right? Then good health gives you better communication because good health means less inflammation, less DNA oxidation, better repair, and you have the DNA of a youthful person, physical structure wise, and all of a sudden your integration with your magnetic field is literally better. And so people that get healthy also tend to get wealthy and they tend to have better relationships and they tend to have their goals reached and they tend to, and people that are unhealthy, like everything goes wrong, right? The
Mhm.
world is falling apart and then they get one disease and two disease and then the relationships fall apart and then the finances aren't working and then they're not, everything because their ability to communicate with their unique universe doesn't work anymore. So
Right,
it's
it's a
another,
real breakdown, right?
yeah, and it's a unexpected outcome of being healthy, which is you'll get what you want if you're sincere and your heart is clean.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, one of the things I had a wake-up call around about 6 years ago was when I ran into the technology about getting molecular iodine, and
Right.
it seems too simple or too good to be true, but we were able to convert it from a crystal to a gas molecule, and then you just drink it in water, and within about 90 days, I was shocked because all of us have a certain level of intelligence, and it felt like I was now accessing a much deeper level because of and I looked it up, like, no circuit, no computer, no nothing can work without iodine in the circuitry. And I thought, well, what if our body is the same as that? Like we are electrical beings. We have biophotons. We're communicating, and what you just said is the outward, expression plus receiving. There's this whole dynamic communication. So something as simple as that. And I thought, well, why doesn't everybody know about that? So I got into the research and found out it was one of the most researched molecules out there. So why weren't we told about this? Like everybody, that's what made me like everybody's got to find out about this. But people don't. They're not able to receive the information or we're not doing a good enough job or something to get the common because it's just common sense.
Mhm.
It's too simple almost, right?
It's the ego and insecurity. When you have an answer that actually works, but it didn't come from the right toolkit. When I go speak on stage, it's not like what it used to be, but when I go speak on stage, one of the first questions is, "What are your credentials?"
Right.
You haven't even heard the information yet.
Yep.
You don't even
That's
know
right.
your number one concern is who's saying it, not what are they saying. Who you get your information from, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. So I get asked that question often. And my answer is that my top level credentials are this one thing that I have absolutely no credentials at all. And I'm so thankful because that allowed me to have a blank canvas and connect with people like yourself who have very deep level research and allowed me to become open because I found that I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And everything I knew was wrong, and that I was able to then receive innocently and humbly because I'm not some humble guy. I have just as much ego problems as anybody, had to have that all crashed out and sorted out. And it's like that's an awesome point for you to make because I love credentials. I love when people have a PhD in something or they're deep master in degrees of whatever. It's cool because they have done research and they are on the ground, but they can't rely on that because that might have limited them. So they got to break the mold and be humbled and go out because otherwise, like you said, if you're stuck inside your toolbox, you're kind of dead, right? It's not going to work. So I love all your analogies, like just everything you're bringing up is going to stimulate the thoughts of everyone listening to become discerning for themselves
Yeah.
and see the improvements go. So yeah, the work you're doing, I think, is absolutely crucial. It's been the perfect timing for us to get together now because this is when everything seems to be gelling more than ever.
Yeah.
You notice that?
Yeah, I see it. That's why I don't push for it. It comes when it needs to come.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all organic.
Yeah.
And if things are gonna crash over there, they crash, it's okay. If things are gonna build this over here, it's great, perfect. I'm in support of whatever. If something needs to crash and dissolve and go away, so be it. But it's, yeah, just being guided. So I really appreciate your time, and we'll definitely keep this conversation rolling into the future coming. I will leave the show notes there for connecting with Kashif and his team and bring support to all of you. So thank you again for your time, everyone, for watching, and thank you, Josh, for being here.
Pleasure.